And welcome back to Coast. George Noory with you. We've got an amazing program for you tonight. Retired entrepreneur Ron Kardos and Bruce Licht asked people why they believe in God. They got different answers every time. They reached out to leaders, scientists, mathematicians, political leaders, journalists, corporate executives, artists, radio hosts, I was one of them, and professors for answers about a higher power, and condensed it in a book called Elevator Pitches for God, 71-page essays by thought leaders on why they believe. Ron, welcome to the program. You as well, Bruce.
Thanks for having us on, George. Appreciate it.
Good to have you both on. How did you guys conceive of this incredible book idea? Start with you, Ron.
Well, we were trying to figure it out ourselves, whether we believed in God. We'd never really thought about it. And Bruce was on a bike trip, and he heard some man describe his religion in about 5 minutes. He did it so eloquently, he looked at his wife and said, gosh, we couldn't do that. So we started taking notes and learning and trying to figure out how concisely and quickly we could convey an idea. And then we came with the idea of, could we prove God in just one page, 500 words, 2 or 3 minutes? Because attention spans are pretty short right now. And we started asking people. We got just blown away by some of the answers. And so I said to Bruce, if we asked 1,000 people, we'd get probably some amazing answers. We should put them all in a book. Because no one hears these arguments. Through our school system, everyone seems to be anti-God. It's become very secular. And I never had heard them. So we started just writing some of the greatest. We came up with lists, like the top great scientists, or the best, nuclear engineers, or the most listened to talk show hosts, or whatever, senators, and we invited them. And much to our surprise, we got answers. I mean, Senator Lieberman wrote back. He got us on the phone. Said, "Who are you guys?" And Alan Dershowitz and Ambassador Friedman and Dennis Prager, and we had movie stars. Maya Bialik said she'd love to do one, and everyone did it for free. It was amazing. No one asked about the money. It was just a tribute to everyone's passion, I would say.
Absolutely. And Bruce, this is not a religious book.
No, it's not, George. We have Jews, Catholics, and Protestants, Muslims, who all worship the same God. We sent all of our prospective authors, including yourself, George, our submissions package information sheet that said that ideally the reader should be able to read the essay and not even know what religion the author follows. It said this is not a proof of any religion. It's not a proof of Judaism, not a proof of Christianity or Islam. They need to just prove God's existence. And you did a great job, George, at following our directions.
Well, thank you. And the other 69 people in this book did a super job. My buddy Larry Elder's in there, too. How'd you get Larry? He was running for president then, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. How did we get Larry? I think, there's another talk show host named Barack Lurie, and he does the Los Angeles show, and he knew Larry. I think he's on the Salem Network. I think Larry is also.
Fantastic. Now, there's a business term, Ron, called elevator pitch. Explain what that is, which is part of the title of your book.
Yeah, an elevator pitch, I came to know it in Silicon Valley, which is where I'm located. It was the thing that when you were pitching an idea to a venture capitalist, and they were pretty impatient. You had to give them a pitch very, very quickly, effectively, profoundly, so that they would want to fund your startup. And it's kind of like the time it would take you would be in an elevator ride with them. So that was called an elevator pitch, just because that's what they called it. That's out this area anyway. So that's what we called it, elevator pitches. It was 500 words. The original title was Proof of God in 500 Words, and I think we felt it was a little heavy-handed, so we lined it up. Just said we'll call it Elevator Pitches for God. But we actually, as you know, when you got the original invitation, said, can you prove God in 5 words? Give us an essay proving God in 500 words, which is one page.
Bruce, when you brought them together for their essays, how much thought did they need to think about before they submitted to you?
Well, a lot of people sent us essays that were just very well thought out and perfect, and other people, we had to work with them, go through the editing process. And so everybody was different. You know, some people would send us 200 words. Some people would send us 6,000 words. So, you know, and everybody didn't make the book. We wanted the largest variety of arguments that we could get. And so there's not really a lot of redundancy in the book.
The story I submitted to you was three little ones, but the big one had to do with one I've mentioned on the air before, about a tragedy that occurred when we were in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that brought back some great memories for me, Bruce.
Oh, it's a great essay, George.
It makes you believe it was truly a
I've
miracle.
listened to you for decades. I've never heard you mention that story.
I mentioned it once on a Friday night open line, and just mentioned it a little bit after the book came out.
Well, I just loved it. It's an amazing story.
Now, where do people get the book, Elevator Pitches for God?
Well, they can go. We have a nonprofit called For Good and For All. We set up a nonprofit to hold the book, and they could go to our website, elevatorpitchesforgod.com, or they can just type in ep4g.com. That's the letter EP, the number 4g.com. And they'll see the whole list of everybody that wrote for us. They'll learn about our nonprofit. So check it out.
Ron, some of the people in the book, of course, are professors, scientists. Did they surprise you?
Yeah, I would say so. We had a lot of academics, engineers, mostly from Notre Dame. And I was expecting some really logical, engineer-type answer. And they waxed poetic. They were beautiful essays on nature and things I would have never expected. David Goh is one of them. I think we opened the book with him, and, he's an award-winning engineer. So, yeah, I was a little surprised. Gerald Schroeder, who's a nuclear scientist, one of the greatest, as I understand it, I thought his essay was pretty hilarious. He just wrote, well, we know God exists. He goes, NASA took a picture of it. he opened, and he actually, if you look in the endnotes, he puts the picture. He says, look, here's where there was nothing. It's really a timeline of space. Here's where there was nothing, then here something began, and light created it. He goes, so there was nothing, and then something started. He goes, what does that sound like?
If you're not a believer in God, after you have read the book, you begin to believe something, don't you?
Look, I was a real skeptic. I think I just, when you grow up, you just think of the physical. I mean, there are things that are invisible, bacteria, I suppose, and they tell you that exists, and you can see it under a microscope, but God was just a very abstract for me, and I didn't really believe it. So this whole quest has been really just to get more data points for me, which reaffirm, which has helped convince me, because I was really quite a skeptic. So
not anymore.
No. You get so many data points from all these different angles, and at some point you just go, okay. I mean, when you ask scientists, I didn't realize this, but they don't have 100% certainty on almost anything. I mean, I think there's I don't know what point they call it to science, but I think it's 70-80%, which is and one of the essays in there actually says that. It says logic will get you about 80% of the way. It's that last 20% that you have to take a leap of faith in a sense. He goes, but proof is only one way to prove something. We use our gut, our intuition, many times without having all the logic and proof points. And it does quite well for most people.
All right, we're going to take a short break for both of you and come back and chat more about Elevator Pitches for God. Their website is linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Next hour, we're going to open up the phone lines, and in addition to asking Ron or Bruce questions about Elevator Pitches for God, you may want to share one of your miracle stories with you, as we have on the program in the past. We'll be back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Noory with Ron Kardos and Bruce Licht. Their book is called Elevator Pitches for God. Bruce, what did you think of my essay when I first submitted it to you two?
Well, I loved it. I mean, if anybody likes Coast to Coast, they're going to love your essay, George. It has 3 paranormal stories. Your story is very unusual. Then you had a story about a truck driver that fell asleep in the middle of the night. He was heading towards a cliff, and all of a sudden he saw a hand grab the wheel and turn him back onto the road. And he looked to the side of him, and there was nobody there. Another story you told was about a call that they got to come to someone's house because someone was sick. They came to the door. An old man opened the door. The paramedics went in, and there was a gentleman on the floor that was dead. And when they turned him over, it was the person that opened the door. Those are wild stories. But what I love about yours is it's so personal, something really bizarre that happened to you and your family when you were young. And would you like me to talk about it, George, or do you want to tell the story?
I've told it before, but Bruce, let's hear it from your perspective.
Well, your grandparents had a multi-level apartment home in the Pittsburgh area, west of Boston, and they had a furniture store at the bottom. And one night while you were sleeping, a fire broke out in the furniture store, and opaque smoke just filled all the apartments above it. And you were awoken in the middle of the night by a fireman that was in full gear, with the mask and the full fireman's gear, and he woke you up, and then you went and woke up your parents, and everybody ran out of the building. In fact, there was a picture of you and your family leaving the building. You were in the Pittsburgh Sentinel paper the next day, showing you running out of the building, and the whole building was engulfed in flames. And your parents went up to the fire chief there, and they wanted to thank him for the member of their team that woke you up. And he said, I don't know what you're talking about. You were out of the building before we even arrived. So you said that, to this day, you don't know what or who woke you up. And in your opinion, you said it was either God or one of God's angels. So it's just a great story, George. And I love how you ended your essay. You said, why would we expect to comprehend everything? Who are we to know why God does things? You said, what kind of world would we be living in if everything made perfect sense? And you said that you believe that some things are supposed to be hidden. But I love the way you ended your essay, George. You said, have some humility. Realize that God knows what God is doing. It's a great essay, George.
It was an incredible moment, too, and I just...
Unbelievable.
The little picture of me in my pajamas and bare feet walking and running across the street that was in the front page of the Pittsburgh Sentinel. I'm going to have to dig that up again, but...
yeah, I'd love to see it.
Truly remarkable. And Ron, lots of people right now are going through a lot of strange times right now. Don't you feel that?
Well, I know there's a lot of lack of meaning. People are, joining this movement and that movement, and they think things are really bad, but there's so many things that are really, really good right now. I mean, in terms of human history, we have fewer childhood deaths. We have conquered most of these horrible diseases of the past with vaccines like polio and diphtheria. People have running water. Famines are almost a thing of the past that are natural. We can get food to everybody now. Sometimes you have political things that go on that may prevent them from getting the food, but by a few bad actors. But the world's producing plenty of food for all its growing population. So with indoor plumbing and the quality of life, I mean, your average American probably lives better than a king. So things are actually pretty good. We haven't had many major wars in the last 70, 80, 100 years. So things, whereas in the past, wars were just a common day occurrence. People had many kids, so that several of them could die in a war because wars were just a constant thing. So things are actually pretty good now. I don't think people realize it because the news tends to publicize everything that's really, really negative. Can I ask you just? I want you guys kind of. Can I ask you a question, George?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this thing happened to you when you were a kid, and I'm just wondering, how did your belief come to be? You were raised Catholic?
I was raised a Catholic.
Yeah.
I was always a believer. I wasn't ultra-religious by any means, and I was just a kid at that time during that smoke fire. It did not change my views. It was more of, gee, Dad, that's strange. He never came in. Who was that guy? But my parents knew, and they were ultra spiritual. My mother especially, who's still with us at 95. And I just think these things enhanced their belief system. But I think I was just too young to really fully understand it at the time.
Did she tell you? I mean, did you say that was an angel? I mean, did you ask her? Who was it, Mom? Or
No, years later, I came to that conclusion myself. And I was convinced it was my guardian angel. Whoever he is.
So there's a thought in by the sages of the Bible that everyone has a mission, everyone has a purpose, and I think most people know they do. And as they get older, they once they can put food on their table, they may ruminate on this and try and figure out what their purpose is in life, and they may start to go in that direction. They know it's not playing more golf and getting a bigger house or bigger TV or whatever, but they realize it's something deeper than that. That has more meaning. And I think I think a lot of people are coming to that point right now that they're asking these questions. You mentioned spirituality. One thing that I completely discovered in this, and I was, that I happen to be Jewish, and what I didn't realize is it's a very, very spiritual belief system. All the Abrahamic religions are. But there's a whole lot going on that we don't know. I think you discussed some of these things in your show. There's near-death experiences people have. I think your next guest is going to speak about ghosts and the like. And like you just said, it's wonderful Bruce brought that up. We don't know everything, and the moment you have a little bit of humility and you can start just to be a little bit open-minded, you realize that there's a lot going on that we have no idea.
The bottom of this book, Bruce, says Volume 1. That tells me a lot.
Yes, we're going to do 3 titles that are exactly the same, Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. And then we're going to move on to other elevator pitch books that talk about the most important conversations we should be having in humanity. And we already have a number of people that have signed up for and written essays for Volume 2. In fact, some of them have been on your show. Dr. Stephen C. Myers already sent in an essay.
Yep.
We have cosmologist Brian Keating, Dr. Zudi Josser. We have a documentary filmmaker, Bruce Schooley, and many more.
What has been the reaction to readers of the book?
It's been incredible. We have had atheists that have told us that by the time they got to Dennis Prager's essay on page 43, they were a believer. We've had an incredible number of people tell us that this book has changed their lives or it's making them a better person. So the response has been really good. And we're just trying to get the book in as many people's hands as we can. I mean, when you read the book, every argument just is on one page. So if one argument doesn't speak to you, you turn the page. There's someone is coming at it from a completely different direction. And my feeling is if you read this whole book and you don't believe in God, you would have to explain to us how all these intelligent people are wrong. The book, it has all the essays, but it's also very well footnoted also. So
what has been the reaction when they get to page 70, 71?
They love it.
We had a guy who walked in. I gave when this first came out, and he's a big time trust lawyer in San Francisco, and I really didn't know how people were going to react to it. And he walked in, and he's very well respected. He's really an amazing guy. And he walked in. He said, "Ron," he said, "that book is a triumph." He was just blown away by it. And look, I'm not telling you. Everyone should know this is a nonprofit, so we're just saying this because we like you to read the book, so you have arguments and you can show it to your friends, put it on your coffee table, show it to your children. Let your children read the arguments because they're not going to get it. I don't think from any kind of school system. Even though school systems, I think. I'm sorry.
Or religious organizations.
Yeah, and I think they need the arguments also. I don't recall hearing any good arguments from my religious institutions.
One thing we
George,
heard
did you get anything from did you go to Catholic school, catechism, or anything?
I went to catechism. I went to public schools, but I went to catechism class all the time.
What did they say? What was their...
I had a difficult time in my youth with organized religion. I always believed that there was a higher power, that it was within us, but I couldn't understand why my non-Catholic friends didn't have to go to confession. I mean, I had to. There were just a lot of conflicts there.
Hey, I still have a problem with organized religion. I think religion's terrible. I mean, there's good religion and there's bad religion. It's like anything.
Of course.
Yeah.
This book is a movie, you know that.
It is.
I mean, I could see a great Hollywood writer taking some of these stories and turning them into movie scenes.
Well, we've had pastors tell us that this is 70 sermons for belief in God. All my friends tell me that this book is a real conversation starter. They put it on their coffee table, and they just love to see the reaction of people that come in and open it. And one thing we've seen from our sales is that most people, they buy one, and then they come back and buy them for all their kids or all their friends. Some people say this is their go-to gift to give away.
Well, schools, in addition to giving out the 10 Commandments, should give away the book.
Yeah, we'd love to get the book in hotels, in the drawers by the bed, in hospice centers. I mean, this book helps people.
You can't put it down once you pick it up, you know.
Is that right?
Thanks.
Did you have any essay that really jumped out at you that you liked in particular, or you remember?
I liked them all. I liked elder stories. I liked some of the professors. You know, I didn't know most of the individuals by name, but it was kind of interesting to tie in their stories with who they are and what they are. And again, how did you blanketly find them all?
Well, we did a lot of research on the internet. We did searches for who are the most important scientists alive, who are the most important doctors, you know, who are the most important physicists, everything. And then we would get the list, and then we would research everybody's contact information. It wasn't easy, George, because a lot of people have, you know, firewalls around them. In fact, a lot of times we got multiple no's before we got yeses. In one case, we emailed Mayim Bialik, the Jeopardy host, neuroscientist, actress, and we got a no from her agent. And then we found someone else that was somehow connected with her, and we asked them to send her the invitation. We got another no. Then we found a relative of hers. We had them approach her. We got a no. And then finally, one of our authors, Raphael Shore, says, you know, I know her attorney. And he contacted her attorney, and we finally got a yes.
And I think you found me direct, didn't you?
Yes, well, you know, I've listened to you for so many decades, George, and I just so appreciate that you were so responsive.
Well, it was a great idea. And
other people responded immediately, too. I mean, we sent an email to Alan Dershowitz. We immediately got a yes. Dennis Prager, I think Ron emailed him at like 1:30 in the morning and emailed back, you know, when do you need it? And within like a week or so, we got the essay, the bio, the headshot.
A perfect essay. Everything came in perfectly.
Well, he's a great attitude and a great talk show host.
Yeah.
Good person.
And we also have the youngest syndicated radio host in the nation, Julie Hartman.
Mm-hmm.
She substitutes for Dennis.
That's right.
We have the ambassador, Ambassador David Friedman, who moved the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem.
Did you get any letters back from anybody who said, I don't believe in God?
Yes, I did. They would email me back and argue with me and say that they were an atheist. And I said, well, you're in luck. We're doing a book called Elevator Pitches for the non-believing God. but nobody would send me an essay. I was looking forward to seeing what they would say.
That would be intriguing to put in a non-believer to see what they would say. I mean, how would they answer my story, for example? What can you say about that? When the fire chief says, we did not go in that building, who was that guy who woke me up?
Yeah, there's another guy who I know, a friend of mine, and he said that when there was someone, when he saw this woman, there's a voice behind him. He said it was as if someone was standing behind me and said, "That's your wife, go get her." And he said, "Ron, it's like there was a person talking to me, and there was no one there." And he, of course, did go get her, and it's his wife today. But you know, there are interventions. I absolutely. I took down the essay from Noory Friedman, who's a expert in near-death experiences. I'm sure you've had people on your show deal with it. But to me, that's been a real education in what the heavenly court is looking for, because they say that about 5% of the people on Earth have had a near-death experiences. And just for your listeners, that's when a person is clinically dead, and then they're resuscitated.
And then they come back. Hold on for a second, Ron and Bruce. We're going to take a short break. We'll come back and talk more and take phone calls with you. And welcome back. We're on Kardos with us. Bruce Licht, the book that they compiled. It's called Elevator Pitches for God. It's a great idea about miracle stories and believing in God. Ron, you were about ready to tell us a story and the break hit us. Did you want to finish that?
Yeah, I guess I should. Okay, so Noory Friedman is an expert in near-death experiences. She's a lady who went around and interviewed hundreds of people. She's read thousands of accounts. And a near-death experience is when someone is clinically dead and they're revived, and they relate an experience that they had while they were clinically dead. And most people have very, very similar stories. I'm sure you've heard it, where they enter a white light, they go to another place.
Mm-hmm.
Many people appear before a heavenly court. And what I was saying is, I found it valuable in that if we can figure out what the heavenly court is grading them on, we can correct it now in our physical world. So when we, eventually go to that heavenly court, God willing, we'll be picked up in a limousine and not turned away. And what she had many fascinating stories, but one of the stories where the lady went and she said it wasn't the big things she did wrong that they played. She said, in fact, the stuff that she did that was good, it was really small stuff, like paying for someone's, a couple bucks towards someone's grocery bill if they were short at the grocery store. They, the court loved that kind of stuff. It was really small things. And they said, now obviously they knew they were going to send her back. They said, what we're concerned about are your thoughts. You have very negative thoughts, and your thoughts are affecting those people that you're thinking of. And they actually played the tape. She had a very high conflict divorce, and she had a father who left her to raise the little boy, and they showed her the future where the boy, her son, was playing with his son. So this was into the future, and they showed what a terrific father that her son had become because his father had left. They said, you see, you don't know the whole story, so you need to stop thinking these negative thoughts. You're really affecting a lot of other people.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Let's go to the phones. John in Wisconsin to get us started. Hey, John, go ahead. Thank you, John. You want to react to that, Ron or Bruce?
Sure, I'll comment to that. I really appreciate that comment. When you look at our book, it's filled with so many amazing people. I mean, on one page we have the gentleman Raymond Leopold, who basically invented cell phone technology. On the next page we have Admiral James Stavridis, who's the Supreme Commander of NATO. And on the next page we have Samuel Spro, who is a recovering addict. And he tells an interesting story like that, too. Just, he had a life of continually being homeless and was into drugs and drinking and all that. And then he heard a voice, and it started him on a better direction. He wrote a real human essay, And it just shows that the breadth of essays in our book.
Indeed it does. Let's go to Mike in Burbank, California, first-time caller. Hey, Michael, go ahead. Great miracle stories all the time. Do you think in my case, Ron and Bruce, the fact that we saw him as a firefighter who woke us up so it wouldn't scare me? I mean, if I saw something else in there that looked like an angel, I think I would have jumped out of bed.
I would say the way God works is he likes to conceal himself. He works within nature because the problem if he reveals himself and showed an angel or something that was supernatural is you would lose your free choice. Okay, so the concept of free choice allows you to choose good or evil. I mean, that's where we're given free choice. And if you knew there was a God, we would become just machines because we would know that we only have to do good and there's someone watching and it's apparent. But because it's a little out of our reach, and God is great at everything he does, including his concealment. We have to use our own freedom to choose good, and that's what happens. That's, I believe, one of the main purposes of life is you're presented constantly with decisions to make, and it's up to us to make the right decision. And like I said earlier, from the NDE story, it can be a very small thing. It can be just giving someone a smile, some encouragement. Many times, it's not the big things. And your whole life's purpose might have been to just give that one person a smile, and maybe they. We hear stories all the time in our religious community where, some guy's on the way to kill himself, and someone he sees something and cheers him up, and someone just gives him a little encouragement or something. It can be very, very small, and I'd encourage your listeners to try and run from one of these things to the next and try and do something good because, I think right now everyone's in the mood of what's in it for me and what do I get out of it, the physical. And I think the meaning of life is actually to do the opposite. You're here to serve the Almighty and do His bidding, really, because we didn't ask to be born.
Let's go to Catherine in Canada, west of the Rockies. Hey, Catherine, congratulations.
And I just want to say thank you for doing this book. Thank you so much.
Well, you too have.
Thank you for those stories.
That's great, isn't it? What a great compliment for you too.
I wanted to say something about you, George. If you died that night in the fire, you wouldn't have had your show, which helps so many people all around the world. So I think you were saved for a reason, to do your mission.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Cornelius is with us in Louisiana. Welcome to the program. Hey, Cornelius. Welcome back. Ron Kardos with us, Bruce Licht. Ron, what surprised you the most about the book Elevator Pitches for God?
What surprised me? Just that people responded. That we had these amazing people that said, "I'll do it." That just blew us away, and we were just so enthusiastic after that because we realized people were so passionate about talking about it, and again, they didn't even no one discussed money. Hey, how much am I going to get paid or anything like that? They just said, "I'd love to." It was that really surprised me. I'd say the most. Bruce, is there anything else that you would add to that, or?
I think that we really saw God's hand in making this book. It's amazing that from the time we came up with the idea, talking about it, figuring out how to contact people. I mean, why would they want to talk to us? And we had to get all the essays in, edit them, set up a website, set up a nonprofit. I mean, the fact that we did all this in 18 months was just unbelievable. And there were some really amazing things that happened. For example, when we started this, the number one podcast rabbi in the world, Rabbi Yaakov Wolbe, said, you really got to get important people. If you could get Rabbi Breidowitz, Yitzhak Breidowitz in Israel, that would really open doors. And we thought, how are we going to get him to write for us? So Ron did some research, and he saw an excerpt of one of his lectures that he did, and he said, Bruce, why don't you transcribe it? At that point, we had a 5-step ladder to get to him. We were going to ask this person to do it and then ask this other person, and it was 5 steps to get to the top. But we transcribed this excerpt lecture, and it came out to be exactly 500 words. So I sent it to him, and I said, Rabbi, is this a coincidence or is there something else going on here? And he said, the fact that you found an excerpt of my lecture and it was exactly 500 words, is an elevator pitch for God in itself, and we went immediately to the top. And we saw so many things like that. It was just an unbelievable process.
Well, you captured me. I liked the idea. It was brilliant.
Oh, you're so nice.
Let's go.
I mean, George, I have to tell you that you were one of the first people that came to my mind. I'm such a fan.
Well, thank you. Let's go to the phones. East of the Rockies, Joe in Long Island.
Yeah. You said how you could think about someone, and that could be someone I was thinking that you haven't really talked to in maybe several years. And if you think about them and pray for them, maybe, then suddenly they call or something like that.
Right. I have that all the time. I totally get that.
That's synchronicity at its best, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. They say there's no coincidences. And, your earlier question, how do you know if you should be persistent and really, or if it's one of those, hey, it's just not meant to be? That's a tough one, because sometimes, I think I kind of rinse everything through my, am I serving the Almighty? What would the Almighty want me to do? Filter every time I do something. It really helps guide me in terms of what would the Almighty want. And the more I do that, the luckier I get, the easier things get. With this Bruce told you one story earlier, but we've had many, many things happen in this book where we just look at each other, and I think once you start paying attention and you want, and keep in mind, I was a complete skeptic. I didn't believe anything. I have to tell you that when you take a step towards God, I know it might be uncomfortable, He'll take a step towards you. And if I could just offer one suggestion to your listeners, and that is, if you haven't done this before, you should talk to the Almighty. Go into a closet. I know it might be embarrassing, but just have a conversation. And I did one. I mean, if it's an uncomfortable conversation, you can say, hey, I feel a little uncomfortable, or whatever you want to say, but just start to have that conversation. And then, in my case, just watch for little things. He'll in my case, he sends little clues back all the time. And they're just for me. I get it. I know he received it, and he's not going to reveal himself, but he's communicated to me that he's around and he's watching what we're doing.
Good advice.
Yeah, I think that, going back to these near-death experiences, no matter what religion you are, no matter what language you speak, no matter how old you are, all the experiences are so similar. So I think there's something there to that obviously there's something behind it all.
Gentlemen, good luck with the book Elevator Pitches for God, Volume 1, and we'll wait for Volumes 2 and 3 when that comes out.